Just say, while you take on these tough issues, they're not very political. We can't win that way. If an issue is morally right, it will eventually be political. Tonight we choose interdependency and our capacity to act and unite for the greater good. The only time that we win is when we come together. You must never stop dreaming. Face reality, yes, but don't stop with the way things are. Dream of things as they ought to be. Use hope and imagination as weapons of survival and progress. America must never surrender to malnutrition. We can feed the hungry and clothe the naked. We must never surrender to illiteracy. Invest in our children. Never surrender and go forward. We must never surrender to inequality. We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive.
Please welcome to our virtual stage, Executive Director of Rainbow Push Silicon Valley, PUSHTECH and Diversity Programs, Dr. Joseph Bryant, Jr.
Good evening, good evening. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, all of our friends from around the world. Welcome, welcome, one and all, to the 6th Annual PUSHTECH Summit, sponsored by the Rainbow Push Coalition, and in particular, our office here in Silicon Valley, Bay Area, Northern California. We are so excited to have you with us another year. 6 years we've been on this path. 6 years we've been looking at technology and investing ourselves in very strategic ways to ensure we could help bridge the digital divide. Our fantastic leader, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, has knocked on the doors of Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley has opened doors. They have provided us opportunities. They have provided us pipelines and partnerships and experiences that have given us a chance to see what the color of technology can really look like. We have seen new positions, new divisions, new initiatives, new partnerships, new collaborations. 6 years, my friends, we have been able to watch this wonderful ecosystem evolve as we've seen doors open for diversity and inclusion. And this year, we are excited to celebrate. As we kick off tonight, we're doing something different. We're going to spend a little time just being thankful for the progress, thankful for the direction, thankful for the people who have made this a reality. We have some amazing honorees tonight we're going to honor. We have some wonderful presentations we want to share about the work of PUSHTECH over the last 6 years. And of course, we're going to hear from our legendary leader, the one and only visionary, the one who has provided for us the path to progress and power, the one who for 6 decades now has been on the front lines of justice and civil rights. We are so excited in the spirit of our leader. We welcome you tonight to the Rainbow Push Coalition, PUSHTECH Summit 2021.
Hi, I'm Van Jones, and I just want to say something that is obvious, but also quite extraordinary. We would not be where we are in this whole fight for inclusion and fairness and diversity in technology had it not been for the contributions of Reverend Jackson, had it not been for the contributions of PUSHTECH. That seems strange to say, because we talk about Reverend Jackson, you're talking about somebody who made history-making contributions in the 1960s, the decade I was born, history-making contributions in the 1970s, the decade I was a small child in school, history-making contributions in the 1980s when he ran for president twice and basically created the roadmap for President Obama and the delegate counting structure that let Obama prevail over Hillary Clinton. History-making contributions in the 1990s and when it came to standing for peace, in the early 2000s when it came to standing for justice. Decade after decade after decade, you would not therefore assume that someone who was making history in the 1960s would even have the opportunity to make history altering contributions in the past 10 years in the most consequential and important sector of our economy, the tech sector. But that's what Reverend Jackson did. To show you how different things are now than they were before Reverend Jackson came on the scene, went to Silicon Valley, met with the leadership down there. Until very recently, we didn't even know the numbers to begin to understand what was happening in Silicon Valley. Before Reverend Jackson and PUSHTECH, we didn't know how many African Americans there were at Apple. We had no idea. We didn't know how many Latinos or Latinas there were at Facebook. No idea. We had no idea how many women there were at Google. These were not numbers that were being shared. There was no real pressure for the numbers to be made transparent. Reverend Jackson had enough sense to know you can't move a number if you can't measure the number. How are we going to make progress if we don't know where we are? And so in addition to all the other things that Reverend Jackson and PUSHTECH did, simply going and getting people to do the count, to share the numbers, to share the math, has created the entire context in which every other diversity and inclusion initiative rests. Every diversity and inclusion hire that's been made to advance this agenda sits inside of that context, sits on top of that achievement. The entire conversation is happening on the shoulders of Reverend Jackson. And that's not new, and it shouldn't be surprising, but decade after decade, Reverend Jackson continues to, I think, surprise the world with his prescience, with his ability to understand what is next, where is the next set of opportunities. He saw Silicon Valley as kind of the next lunch counter for him to go and with his peers, pull up a chair and say, hey, what's going on here? And even though Reverend Jackson wasn't a part of the sit-in movement, he was a part of a generation that knew what it meant to have a seat at the table. And as a result of him, we have a seat at the table in Silicon Valley. It's not big enough and we don't have enough of them, but we have a seat. And I can just say, as somebody who has followed Reverend Jackson my entire life, I was born in 1968. We can't even imagine what America would have been like without him. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Between 1968, where they killed Dr. King, and 2008, when they elected Barack Obama president, that was 40 years in the wilderness for justice, 40 years in the wilderness for dignity, 40 years in the wilderness for our fight, for our struggle. And you cannot have a span that long without having a very powerful center post. Reverend Jesse Jackson was that center post for us through the 60s, through the 70s, through the 80s and the 90s, getting us to where we are today. And we still rely on that center post. We still rely on those broad shoulders. And I'm proud, as one of the founders of Yes We Code, along with Prince Rogers Nelson. And I'm proud to still be a part of the Dream Corps, which houses the legacy organization Dream Corps Tech for Yes We Code, to know that we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And so many of us in this field would not be able to do what we do were it not for Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson and PUSHTECH. So thank you.
It's been so exciting to watch the journey over these last 6 years. Reverend Jackson didn't just start this journey, though, 6 years ago. He had connections in Silicon Valley and with technology companies starting in the late 90s. He started working with leaders to try to make sure that the evolving economy that was being implemented and the impact therein would be able to touch those that were oftentimes forgotten about, oftentimes not included. And he began to have those conversations, those meaningful dialogues with leaders of great tech companies throughout Silicon Valley, just to say, make sure we have a seat at the table. And so we've been able to watch those companies open many doors of leadership. And because of that, we are grateful always for Reverend Jackson's influence. But tonight, as we honor these very special trailblazers, all of them have walked through open doors. All of them have set a path of progress and impact. All of them have used their creative genius to set new standards for the way we view and experience technology. Some of it from the corporate setting, some of it from the boardroom, some of it behind the scenes, some of it in just opening up more ways for us to utilize technology for our day-to-day benefit. But all four of these wonderful, amazing honorees tonight are deserving of this type of honor and recognition. And on behalf of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson and the entire Rainbow Push family, I am so excited to present our 2021 6th Annual PUSHTECH Summit honorees, being presented to us by our PUSHTECH Administrator, Ms. Charlene Lawson.
The Impact Award is presented to one who has displayed a phenomenal level of commitment, passion, and expertise, which has yielded significant positive effects in immeasurable ways, creating a wave of even greater impact for others to follow as the fruit of their labor.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Sandberg, and I'm so honored to congratulate Laura Murphy on an Impact Award. If there's anyone who's had impact, it's Laura. She has really helped us at Facebook think about social justice, think about the impact we have and the responsibility we have, and set ourselves up to meet that responsibility. I have learned so much from her. She has been a partner. She has challenged us. She has helped all of us, I think, as individuals and a company. Laura, congratulations.
Laura has made an incredible impact on companies, particularly in the technology sector with Facebook and Airbnb. Her civil rights audits have brought about very positive change. She is a tireless advocate for diversity, for civil rights, and for social justice. Congratulations, Laura.
Laura, congratulations. You absolutely deserve this award. When Airbnb was dealing with issues of discrimination and bias, we turned to Laura to help lead our efforts to make meaningful change. In nearly 5 years since we started working together, we're humbled to still partner closely with Laura as we take on these challenging issues. Laura's never backed down from pushing for what is right. That is what's made her such a powerful partner and force for equality. From partnering with Airbnb to conduct a civil rights audit in 2016 to combating bias on our platform, Laura's led with integrity and left a track record of real impact. Thanks to Laura, I first met Reverend Jackson a few years ago. I want to acknowledge the important role Rainbow Push plays in Silicon Valley, and we're proud to count Rainbow Push as an important partner in our work. It's one of the reasons we've been excited to sponsor the PUSHTECH Summit for the past several years. Now, we know there's much more work to do. We wouldn't be where we are today without Laura Murphy. So Laura, we thank you for everything and congratulations.
Hi, Belinda Johnson. This is take two for Laura Murphy. I am the former COO of Airbnb and currently on the board of Airbnb and the board of PayPal. So over the last 4 years, I've gotten to know Laura Murphy very well, and I cannot think of anyone who is more deserving of this award. I first met Laura in 2016 when she agreed to lead a civil rights audit for Airbnb in the face of Airbnb confronting some very ugly realities of discrimination. I'd say Laura never holds back. She always gives it to us straight, and she always pushes us to do better. And as a civil rights leader, she made us dig deep. And most importantly, she always held us accountable. She can be tough, but she advocates with such grace and respect and integrity. And as a result of our collaboration with Laura, Airbnb's built some incredible partnerships with a range of civil rights organizations, including Rainbow Push. And thanks in large part to Laura, Airbnb now meets with a broad coalition of civil rights organizations on a regular basis. And I can say without a doubt, Laura has helped Airbnb become a better company. And personally, I also count on Laura as a personal friend and an advisor. And she was someone that I turned to in difficult moments, and she was always there. So thank you, Laura, for being the amazing leader that you are, and congratulations on this award.
I met Laura Murphy 10 years ago when I opened National Action Network's DC Bureau. At the time, Laura was the head of the DC office of the ACLU, and she quickly took me under her wing. Over the years, Laura has been a mentor, a friend, a confidant, but most importantly, she's been a supporter. She has seen me, and she's seen potential in me that she's mined and helped make me grow. She is actually personally responsible for me bringing my advocacy to tech. Her impact as a leader is not only in her advocacy, but also in her ability to groom other leaders. Without a doubt, she has made a tremendous impact in social justice and civil rights, and now in tech. And her work definitely deserves to be heralded and honored. Congratulations, Laura. You are my shiro, and I'm so glad that I count you among my personal mentors. I also want to give a special thanks to Reverend Jackson for all he's done in advancing the issues of equity. I would not be working in tech if it were not for the light that you shone on the inequities that existed in the halls of Silicon Valley.
I'm Houston Murphy, Information Technology Manager in the U.S. government. My sister Laura has been a passionate advocate for meaningful social change since before she finished elementary school. Decades before working for Congressman Perrin Mitchell, Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, Speaker Willie Brown, and the ACLU, Laura was pushing the power structure to be more fair, inclusive, and just for marginalized people. It takes many different skills to make meaningful change. It takes a wide variety of strategies to combat bigotry, sexism, racism, and classism. Sometimes you need a coalition to get things done, and sometimes you need to go it alone. Laura has employed both strategies very effectively. Now, a compromise is like a climber spike. It's a temporary measure to hold forward progress so that you don't slip back. And a road is merely common ground used to travel in the same direction. As a visionary change agent, Laura has used the spike, the road, the coalition, and the solo approach from corporate America through the halls of Capitol Hill to great effect. This recognition is long overdue and likely will not be the last that she receives. She deserves this recognition.
I'm Billy Murphy, an attorney in Baltimore, and I'm the proud big brother to my little sister, Laura. But don't get it twisted. Birth order has not prevented me and Laura's 3 other siblings from looking up to her as the family star, the uncontested leader of our generation. Laura's life has been the relentless and principled pursuit of freedom here and abroad. For her entire life, she has unabashedly, repeatedly, and effectively told the truth to power. Her loyalty to the cause of freedom and justice has been unbreakable. Her integrity is unmatched, her reliability unquestionable, her mastery of tactics and strategies superb, her genius unequaled, her desire and ability to develop future generations of leadership, everything you could possibly ask. How proud am I of her? Infinitely. In the words of the brilliant anonymous Negro who invented the phrase, she is truly a bad mother ducker, the OG of the civil rights community. Laura Murphy, I believe I speak for the entire civil rights community in saying to the world that we love you with all our hearts. May the force be with you.
My name is Madeline Murphy Rabb, and I'm the older sister of the indomitable Laura Wheeler Murphy. She is the baby sister of 3 older brothers and the daughter of Madeline Wheeler Murphy, a community activist and journalist, and William H. Murphy Sr., a judge. Our parents raised their 5 children in the segregated working class community of Cherry Hill in Baltimore, Maryland. They taught us, to whom much is given, much is expected. Now, at a very young age, Laura was privy to and participated in the raucous, heated, intense conversations around the Murphy dinner table. Politics, racism, current events, school, civil rights, social justice, and feminism. In the Murphy family, saying, I don't know, or not having an opinion, or mumbling were akin to a mortal sin. It was around the male-dominated Murphy dinner table that our fierce mother taught Laura how to deal with opinionated men. And at that same dinner table, Laura learned about leadership, relentlessness, having the courage of her convictions, critical thinking, and compassion. In our family, she is adored, respected, and we are in awe of Laura. And we rejoice, but we are not at all surprised by her many accomplishments and contributions. We all know, never underestimate the indomitable Laura Wheeler Murphy. Thank you, Reverend Jackson and Rainbow Push, for recognizing my sister's extraordinary accomplishments by giving her this coveted award. Thank you.
Welcome to the stage, the Impact Award honoree, Laura Murphy, policy strategist, civil rights leader, and president of Laura Murphy and Associates.
Hi, my name is Laura Murphy, and I'm president of Laura Murphy and Associates. I am so honored to receive the Impact Award from PUSHTECH 2021. Reverend Jackson, our families have been intertwined for over a half century. You sold the Afro-American newspaper as a teenager in South Carolina. You campaigned for my brother Billy when he ran for mayor in 1983 of Baltimore. You and I worked together on your presidential campaign, where I was briefly a fundraiser on your staff. In the 90s, we walked the halls of Congress together to try to defeat the terrible crime bill of 1994. And now in this century, you and I have worked together to make Silicon Valley more fair, more just, more inclusive. and more aware of its corporate obligations to the entire constituencies they serve. I'm especially proud of the fact that we were able to get 12 women-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned firms as part of Airbnb's public offering. A couple of years ago, when I asked you to come into Airbnb, you brought a team of minority financial services organizations. You met Brian Chesky, Belinda Johnson, and the leadership. And everything that's happened since then has just been pretty miraculous. I rely on your advice and your leadership. Without it, I wouldn't be where I am today. Your team has been incredible. Butch Wing, Pastor Bryant, John Mitchell. And I hope to continue the work that I'm doing to hold corporations accountable. I do civil rights audits on behalf of the entire civil rights community to look at practices, policies, products, diversity and inclusion measurements, to figure out how we can collaborate to make those things better and to make them non-discriminatory. So we've got a lot of work to do, but today I'm celebrating you, Reverend Jackson, and our collective efforts with corporate America. Thank you.
The Influencer Award is bestowed on one who has significantly utilized their role, position, and personal commitment, resulting in an extraordinary level of powerful influence and yielded a continuous flow of residual benefits for the greater good. Welcome to the virtual stage, our influencer honoree, Chris Gentile, Google's first Director of Supplier Diversity and Sustainability.
Hello, PUSHTECH. I am so incredibly grateful for and humbled by the opportunity to accept the Influencer Award from PUSHTECH. I would like to thank my partners and friends at Rainbow Push, with whom I've been so honored to do really important work, driving partnership with Google and communities of color and communities of faith through the network. Through the first PUSHTECH 2020, each of those since, at the annual conventions in Chicago, and through the work we've created through Faith Tech and the Connected Churches program, we have brought light to opportunities to grow equity and access to tech, moving significant dollar, time, and opportunity investment for and with communities of color. I want to give thanks to all those at Google, those Googlers who have put in countless hours to so faithfully execute this work together over the years, to those at PUSHTECH, especially Bushwing, who has motored so much of the vision for opportunity of equity in tech, Pastor Joseph Bryant, my constant and visionary partner in Faith Tech, whose urgency helped prepare Push's Faith Network for the past unprecedented year, and Glenda Gill, whose early partnership helped us bring Google and Rainbow Push closer together. And of course, our leader and guide in all this work has been Reverend Jackson, and to him I extend my thanks for making these achievements possible and for influencing not only how but why we do this work. And during the crises that we have faced, be they crises of violence, atrocities in the Black faith and other faith communities, violence against individuals, the crisis of this pandemic, or the slow awakening realization in our country of the systemic ills of racism and social and economic injustice, Reverend Jackson has been our compass, reminding us of the many sacrifices that those who've lived and died before us have made in order to give people like me, my colleagues in this work, and so many of you in the Push Network, the opportunity to carry the baton with integrity, urgency, and to have impact and influence that matters. Especially over this past year of challenge, his counsel to me looms large on my sense of purpose for this work. And so I thank you, Reverend Jackson, for giving the light to me and so many others to help us push onwards. Thank you, PUSHTECH.
The Entrepreneur Award recognizes one who has launched their vision and dream with great tenacity, consistency, and sacrifice. The result is a strong, sustainable, and successful enterprise for an entrepreneur worthy of celebration. Welcome to our virtual stage, our entrepreneur honoree, Anita Gardine, CEO, President, and founder of ONIVA.
Hi, I'm Anita Darden Gardine. I'm the CEO and co-founder at ONIVA. Thanks to Reverend Jesse Jackson and his introduction to PUSHTECH in 2014, I'm the 11th Black female in U.S. history to raise $1 million, and I'm banking my $5 million this month. Thanks to Reverend Jackson's introductions to Microsoft, Intel executives, our patented technology platform is thriving and growing. Please allow me to share ONIVA Concierge Care with you all. Thanks to Reverend Jackson.
The ONIVA Concierge Care technology platform delivers trusted, personalized, in-home care as an employer-provided benefit. Finding trusted caregivers can be a full-time job. The ONIVA Me app makes it so finding caregivers only takes minutes.
Watch how easy and convenient finding a quality caregiver with a fingerprint-based, living FBI background check can be.
Today I need to schedule childcare with driving. I need my Oniva Pro to pick up my daughter at 3:30 from school, drive her to our home, help her find a healthy snack, and get her homework started. The Oniva platform has returned 4 independent business operators who will come to my door. Oniva only presents caregivers who meet all applicable local and state requirements and who have a living FBI background check. Meaning, if a violation is found, Oniva is notified and the individual is removed from the platform so they're not in anyone's home. Watch May's video and see for yourself what an outstanding Oniva Pro she is.
Hello, my name is May and I would love to take care of your family as your Oniva caregiver. My services include driving and childcare. I have over 8 years of childcare experience for both agencies and private homes. I love working with children and enjoy their playfulness and creativity. I look forward to bringing my care to you and your family as your Oniva Pro.
I can also see May's current Trustline certification, meaning that Oniva has verified that she has passed and maintains a fingerprint-based living FBI background check. May also has first aid and CPR, and I can see her past experience with 2 other families, all of her personal car and insurance information. I choose May. I add in a note about a healthy snack and that I'd like her to start her homework. I click Post Bookings and May will get a push notification about this job. See, there's my request. Oniva offers GDPR level data protection and privacy, so May will only be able to see some of my information, just enough to let her know if she can meet the request. May gets another push notification confirming that she's got the job and now has access to my detailed instructions and locations. Once May is done with this job, all of my private information is withdrawn. In less than 3 minutes, Oniva found me 4 FBI background checked caregivers, their references, current certifications, and availability. I'm done booking care for my daughter today, and I can easily get back to work knowing she will be well taken.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share Oniva. If you want to learn more about how to join as an enterprise customer or as a caregiver, come find me, the lady in the red dress, Anita@Oniva.com. Thank you, Reverend Jackson. Please, everybody, come join us at Oniva. Bye.
The Legacy Award recognizes outstanding achievement in the lifetime contributions that have a lasting, valuable impact. The recipient has earned a place of honor because of their distinctive work, dedicated service, and high standards of excellence, all of which leaves a legacy for others to embrace, follow, and celebrate.
Legendary Emmy Award-winning animator Leo Sullivan is one of the pioneering African-American animators who've helped lead the revolution of positive animated Black characters. Leo has managed animation studios nationally and internationally, overseeing all phases of production. His work includes development and animation of the Hey Hey Hey, It's Fat Albert special for NBC and the original Train for the Soul Train show. In his vast career, Leo has worked as a producer, director, layout and storyboard artist, a writer at various studios such as Warner Brothers, Filmation, New World, Hanna-Barbera, Richard Williams, and many more. In addition, he instructed classes in classical 2D and digital animation at the Art Institute of California, Orange County. Currently, he is the president and CEO of Leo Sullivan Multimedia, working alongside his wife and company's CFO, Etheline Sullivan, to produce educational and entertaining media content for children ages 5 to 17, featuring animated and live-action films. The company offers a family alternative on the internet through many multimedia sources to reach out to the underserved African American family with positive content for all families. The company brands include AfroKids.com, an informational website for parental guidance and salute to youth achievement, AfroKids.tv, an interactive website with stories, games, animation webisodes, and more for the entire family. AfroKids TV channel, now streaming on Roku, Amazon Fire Stick TV, and Android TV. And the Tuskegee Red Tails graphic novel, an interactive ebook featuring videos, illustrations, informative text, and popover section for user interaction. Their mission is to empower children with websites that provide a variety of interactive features produced in various media styles and streaming media channels that engages, educates, and entertains young minds.
Welcome to the stage, our legacy honoree, Leo and Lynn Sullivan, co-founders of AfroKids, 50 plus years in video animation on Fat Albert, Soul Train, Scooby-Doo, and Hanna-Barbera.
The power and priority of inclusion and equity in the new normal. Thank you, the Honorable Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr., Dr. Joseph Bryant Jr., Executive Director, Rainbow Push Silicon Valley, and our event host for bringing Leo Sullivan Multimedia Incorporated and its AfroKids brand into this conference that brings together influencers in tech, media, sports, and civil rights.
Thanks, sweetheart. Lynn and I have been on a wonderful trip down memory lane. And while shifting through our archives of our life's work, our journey has spanned over 6 generations. A lot of you weren't born during that time, but that's how long we've been around so far. So, and we wanted to, when we created AfroKids, we wanted to bring a message that we had to get ourselves, our act together with the African American families and any other families that can relate to our culture, and they should know about our culture, and our kids should have a mental growth in what they do, and families the responsibility of giving back to the children as well as to themselves. So that's why we have to continue this. That's why we've been at it so long, because over those generations, we've seen our children's minds sapped of their own identity. They don't know who they are anymore. So I figured we as parents and generations have to take notice of that, because they are the future. And if we don't take notice, there won't be a future for them. Think about that. It's your responsibility.
And that's why Leo Sullivan Multimedia and its AfroKids brand were formed to address the lack of diversity and character representation in the popular media, and for the preservation of our shared heritage, where our children can discover, learn about, connect with, and understand their history and culture, build self-esteem, learn life lessons, family values, and responsibility.
You see, the AfroKids brand represents our past, our present, and the future. We invite each of you watching here today to show and share our story with your friends and family. Lynn and I are in constant state of creating, building, learning, sharing, and researching and connecting with people of like minds who care about our children and our Black families. We continue to cultivate future generations of animators, creators, influencers, people who have something to contribute to our culture, to our advancement, to us being good American citizens. And that's where the melting pot truly works. Join the AfroKids, and there are several ways you can do this. You can help us keep our mission alive by becoming a patron through our Patreon account. Or you can secure an equity position in our company's stock offerings. Invest In our media projects with a revenue share, purchase an Afro Kids subscription from your family, for your children. Just see them see positive images of themselves and get positive messages. Become a sponsor of Afro Kids TV website or our 4 streaming channels.
Again, we thank Reverend Jackson, Dr. Bryant, and the PUSHTECH team for this wonderful honor.
Wow, all of these amazing honorees, all of their contributions, all of their service, all of their sacrifice, all of their ingenious ways they have used technology. Would you please make sure that you give them some more hands of love, even virtually? I know this is a virtual conference, but this is a tech conference because we are PUSHTECH. So make sure that you are in the chat. Make sure that you're hashtagging out, making sure that all of the messages, all of these people's names are going out. You saw their Twitter handles. You saw all of their social media handles. We want to make sure that they're getting blown up tonight, as they say. So make sure you show all of them some love. You show Laura and Chris and the Sullivans and my sister Anita. Show them all some love. They've all been amazing. And of course, show our leader some love, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. Make sure you're hashtagging out PUSHTECH, hashtagging out diversity, hashtagging out Jesse Jackson. Make sure you're engaging with us. We want this to be an experience like no other, where you can be a participant in the conference. We don't want you to just watch us. We want you to engage with us, even as we transition to this wonderful conversation tonight. Here we are. We're going to have a fireside chat.
Welcome everyone to opening night of the 6th annual PUSHTECH Summit. It is my joy and pleasure to be here in what is now a very historic and regular occasion for the last several PUSHTECH Summits. I have had the great privilege of sitting down with 2 of my favorite leaders, 2 mentors, 2 freedom fighters, and 2 of the bravest soldiers in the war to ensure that tech becomes more diverse and becomes more fair and equitable for all of us. So today I am joined by Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. He went from being on the mantle of my fireplace because of my dad, Eddie Rye, who worked on both of his presidential campaigns in '84 and '88, to being someone I got to stand shoulder to shoulder with and learn from as he worked so diligently to ensure that so many people who look like you and me have senior roles in the tech industry. And also today we have Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who represents Oakland, or as she says, Wakanda. And yes, there she is. She serves on the prestigious Appropriations Committee, but I want you all to know, when you all are sleeping, Barbara Lee is working. She has been that way for so long. And as a result of that, we are so much further. So when W.E.B. Du Bois asks us what the meaning of progress is, I'm sure that you can find Barbara Lee right there pictured. And finally, certainly
that's on the case.
Yeah, she's on the case. Last but certainly not least, one second, Reverend, one second. We have Dr. Joseph Bryant Jr. and Reverend, in true Reverend fashion, said Dr. Bryant is staying on this panel. And so here he is for this fireside chat. We thank you for all of your work that you do. Again, when we're sleeping, when we're aware of all you do, Dr. Bryant, thank you for being a soldier in this fight as well. With that, Reverend, I yield to you. I know you've been waiting to say something.
I'm glad to be with you today. I'm on a bus trip. My wife gets an honorary doctorate at A&T, who we graduated from '64. Honorary degree on, so it's kind of her trip. Mother's Day, she gets an honorary degree to be Dr. Jackie. Let me see her. Also, we go to Atlanta, where my daughter graduates, on to Washington, where Your son's daughter graduates. Kind of graduates a month. We decided rather fly 6 times, take the bus. I'm a bus fan, you know. I rode the Greyhound bus, is not quite like this. You know? It's really time for a family affair. Anything within 300 or 400 miles, it's all to catch a bus. I mean, a private bus. It's not trailways. Speaking of buses, the drivers in this bus use as much high-tech stuff as airline pilot. Everything from GPS on across is high-tech. So Silicon Valley is critical for it drives the world now. Once people worked in the hills of West Virginia in coal mines, gas, that was the deal, coal mines. Then it's just the Detroit, the auto industry. That's what it is. Microsoft, the Silicon Valley is masterminding all the self-driving cars. So in many ways, it's the center of the world. I'd say it's a category that debate about Trump, calling for revolution, and with that kind of leverage. Newspapers always exercise the right to edit or to not allow certain things in paper. They've always done that. And so freedom of the press is the freedom to not let you in or kick you out if you violate certain rules. I got a president really incite 6,000 people to kill Congress people. You kill them because they didn't catch them.
You know, I want to go to you, Congresswoman Lee. One, to just intro yourself with your opening remarks, but I also want you to contextualize this work that you're doing nonstop. There was a moment, you know, where the tech industry diversifying was a hot button issue, was so important. So many people were engaged, you know, and then over time it's kind of shifted, you know, maybe because the administration has changed, people don't see it as such an important issue, but you're still right there in the fight. Can you talk about why it's so important to be standing shoulder to shoulder with Reverend on the legislative side of this issue while he fights kind of a more public facing fight with boards, taking on senior leadership in corporations. And of course, you all have done that too. Why is it so important to have the legislative strategy push behind this work?
Sure, Angela, first of all, let me just thank you. I'm so glad to see you. We miss you on the Hill, but you have taken your experience, your background, and put it all together and still working for the people in a space that we never would have an opportunity to be in. So proud of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Bryan, good to see you. Thank you for keeping hope alive. And to Reverend Jackson, let me just say, first of all, congratulations to Dr. Jackie and to all of your family. And I'm so glad that we're with you at this moment with your family. You know, you work so hard for justice and for freedom and for human and civil rights. To see you now with your family, celebrating them in a bus, doing some new things for you that you haven't done in the past, it really warms my heart. So I just want to say thank you for giving us this moment to experience this with you, the human side, the father, the grandfather, the husband, you know, it's just really amazing. And so this warms my heart. And I know it does with everyone who is seeing you today. You know, Reverend Jackson, first of all, we would never have been able to move the needle at all had it not been for yourself and Rainbow Push. We have to have an outside and inside strategy, and it's got to be coordinated on anything that we do. And because of you and what Rainbow Push has done, you know, we set up Tech 20, then it was Tech 2020, 5 or 6 years ago. It's Tech, right now it's CBC Tech. And we're plugging along and fighting still very hard. And let me just tell you, since we began this with you, there have been about 20 bills. You know, we didn't have any bills before, really significant legislation addressing equity in the tech sector until we partnered with you and started this movement. And so the bills, and just mention a couple of these bills because it's so important, Angela, that people understand that inside strategy with legislation. We have bills that advances equity in the tech sector, but that includes empowering teachers, curricula, and funds for research. We have incentivizing students to pursue STEM degrees. We have legislation promoting science testing standards. We have legislation that offering grants for STEM education. These are just a few. And as a member of the Appropriations Committee, we have, and it's because of the push from Rainbow Push and CBC Tech, that we've been able to get millions of dollars into the Department of Education for STEM education for girls, low-income communities, communities of color, to really begin to provide STEM education in the public schools. And so we're working on all fronts, the policy front, the legislative front, as well as the appropriations fund to get the money right away. Sometimes legislation takes forever, but as an appropriator, we figure out how to use our opportunities to direct money to the goals of what we have to achieve as it relates to the goals of Tech 20, of Tech, CDC Tech, and Rainbow Push Tech.
Now, what's phenomenal is they talk about the ingenious of Gates and all that in Silicon Valley. So with the defense contract, the research done by the Defense Department is a government-sponsored, government-subsidized industry, right? And now I'm glad to see that because we went out, Mr. Rogers tried to run us out of Silicon Valley. He was like our Bull Connor. We went back with Butch Wing. God bless Butch Wing's heart. His wife died so suddenly a month ago. We're still bleeding from Butch Wing is a force in this movement, to be sure. But anyhow, we went to a HP board meeting, and they wouldn't let us in at first. They said we were shares of stock. We got in the meeting, got the microphone, and I made the case that you sell these products all over the world. Two of the founders really of HP were black. Still living in old men, still live in Silicon Valley. They didn't get a chance to expand it, they were left behind. Now they broke into two companies, there are two blacks on each board, Silicon Valley. There's board of Amazon, of Microsoft, of Apple, of Facebook. So we wanted to go beyond those persons to the C-suites. Beyond C-suites, the issue of supplier contract development. Up in these hills, you can see number of trees and people in the trees, but they have high tech, right? And the hills, nowhere it is not. It's impactful in transmitting information to us, good and bad, is hard to explain.
You know, Reverend Bryant, I want to turn to you. Reverend Jackson has been quoted as saying that companies must set specific, quantifiable diversity and inclusion goals, targets, and timetables. Without them, the ability to measure and be accountable for progress will be difficult. We know that Rainbow Push historically has not just done this work with tech. This is the last of, a long strategy of ensuring that the automobile industry is more diverse, that Wall Street is more diverse, and the tech industry is just the latest example of that. Talk about why you all took on tech and how important it is to continue this beyond 2022. Congresswoman Lee's point, like, we'll just change the name because we're going to keep going, right? So I want to hear from you on that.
Exactly. And that's been a part of Reverend Jackson's vision all along. And that's why, as we engage this year for our summit, we're calling it PUSHTECH Diversity and Inclusion. We're leaning in because the whole idea of this concept came from Reverend Jackson's ingenious plan to have us approach the companies and ask them for the diversity numbers. We asked them for their EEO1 reports. We asked them for their data on how many percentages of African Americans and Hispanic Americans and women were part of the companies from top to bottom. And the data gave us
they were embarrassed.
Right. The data gave us the ammunition to be able to speak to the issues, because we didn't want to just say to them from an emotional perspective that we need you to make changes. We wanted to show them with their own data that you are not having your companies built with the same type of creative energies and the same type of diversity that your consumer base has. And so this is going to be an ongoing battle, simply because many of them not only were embarrassed, as Reverend Jackson said, but they didn't realize they had not been inclusive in their strategies, in their plans. They had been very tunnel visioned in how they did their hiring practices, how they opened seats of leadership and management. So it was so important for us to begin with the data, continue to go back to them and ask them for updates and reports, and from the work that Congresswoman Lee is doing, to be able to legislate some of the changes that needed to happen from a business and corporate perspective. Because in order for Silicon Valley and the tech industry to change, we knew there had to be, as she articulated so well, an inside and outside game where they became more aware as we continue to push from the outside to ensure that diversity became a reality.
Joe, let me make this observation as well. When we went to Louisville and worked with the Breonna Taylor's case, half of Black Louisville does not have internet. We're working on a project right now called Concordia Project. So the people live there, mostly Black women, mold and mildew and stuff in their houses. His asthma and dying. Well, 3 other apartments, not one Wi-Fi, not one internet. So that's why I need to expand it continuous. We now got youngsters in jail in Chicago and Illinois, really, with precincts in the jail, learning as they go. And the kids, they usually get some of the jail time to learn basic, apps and codes and programs. So I'm excited. One of my guys, you may recall, Barbara, years ago, he was in jail, and we were trying to get telephone rates down. His ingenious breakthrough undercut his big prices. Second thing was the guy that we knew in Chicago was in jail, and he knows to break locks. So because I found that this guy used his skill to, in fact, break a code and create a lock you couldn't unlock. He had time and focus. So what is locks and keys or jails and cities, high tech is the end to say. I'll get higher, really.
Yeah, Reverend Jackson, let me just mention this, listening to what you were saying in terms of access to broadband and the internet. And I do a lot of work at the United Nations as UN rep from the House. In 2016, the United Nations declared that access to internet is a human right. And so we have to see this also within the context of our human rights struggle, internationally as well as domestically. And with regard to what Dr. Bryant mentioned in terms of the EEO data, EEO1 data, we couldn't do anything on the Hill had you not been able to and continue to push for the release of this data. Because guess what? We have Black caucus chairs, Hispanic caucus chairs of committees that can either handle this, the oversight with sticks or carrots. And do we need more regulatory sticks? Or are they going to comply with goals, timetables, inclusiveness, and racial equity or not? And so the information you have and have given to us really helps us determine where our committee chairs go and how they approach these companies.
The real demographics lend itself to what we're talking about. For example, globally, half of human beings are Asian, half of them are Chinese. One is African, 1/4 Nigerian. 2/3 of our nation speak Spanish. English is the minority language in America. English in America is a minority state. You put together Russia and the US, that's 6% of the population. 94% of people, almost people of color. We have an obligation to fight for the right reasons. The reason why they don't kick it back too hard now because the ghetto represents money market, talent, location, and progress. The people who are unserved and underserved limit the growth of the companies.
One of the things that I think is so important, Reverend Bryant, you talked about that this year you included diversity and inclusion in the name of the summit. But one of the things that you heard, I think, from Reverend talking about Louisville and their inability to access internet, half of the Black population, he said, doesn't have access to internet. And then Congresswoman Lee says, yeah, it's a human rights issue, according to the UN. So the question I have for you is, why not put some of this emphasis also on equity? D&I has become, very much a window dressing kind of a thing. They put people in the role to shut up, Reverend Jackson and you and Congresswoman Barbara Lee, especially now that she's in the majority and has the carrots and the sticks. So why not put more emphasis on equity given, everything we saw last summer with George Floyd and the protests around Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery as well? People started putting Black Lives Matter in the signature blocks of their emails, but they haven't put them in board seats and in C-suites. And, so how do we facilitate more equitable outcomes here?
That's a great question. And one of the things that we tried to do, even as we put out the theme for this year, we wanted to make a branding switch, obviously moving from PUSHTECH 2020 into PUSHTECH Diversity and Inclusion, which was always a part of our tagline. But we also added in the tagline the power and priorities of equity in the new normal. And so the idea is we're trying to make sure we still pepper the narrative with the right type of wording, the right type of messaging. And so the whole idea of equity, as a matter of fact, a couple of our panels specifically have been asked to address what you just alluded to, and that is, okay, we've had this global awakening, as it's been called, behind all of the unrest of last summer and beyond. But we've been fighting this fight a long time. You know, you and I have the privilege of watching these two giants who are generations ahead of us, who've been on the front lines of this fight a long time. And now we're just moving into this realm of technology and that industry. And equity is really the goal, because it's not just the D&I, you know, taglines, as you mentioned, but to be able to make sure that there is equality, that there's a sense that we're not just asking you to give us a seat at the table, we're asking you to make sure that the table is fairly divided. And that's the difference between, you know, just getting a seat and versus actually having equitable distribution of resources, opportunity, pipelines, employment, education, and broadband is such a huge part of internet access. One of the programs that Reverend Jackson helped us to launch, he said, I want to open up Sunday school classes in churches to become tech centers. And what we discovered was, as we went to churches to try to have that reality, it's called Faith Tech now, our program is called Faith Tech, we could open up the Sunday school rooms, but if they didn't have Wi-Fi, they didn't have broadband access, we still couldn't run tech centers in the community. And so the idea of equity is a huge part of the messaging that we want to shift people into. And I think everyone has the feel-good idea of the Black Lives Matter mantra, but they don't have the actual get down to the nitty-gritty grind idea of what equity really costs and what it really causes us to do to make it a reality.
Let me just say, while Reverend Jackson is here, following up with what Dr. Bryan said very quickly. Look, Reverend Jackson, 2 years ago, you drilled down with me to tell me to stop using diversity and inclusion so much and to talk about racial equity. Now, I lead with racial equity and then diversity and inclusion. So just know what you told me has resonated with the CBC. So I don't even use diversity and inclusion that often now. When I talk to tech companies, I talk about racial equity.
First, June 19th to 24th is the Rainbow Push Convention in Chicago. You have to be there, line, watch us today. RainbowPush.org, get all the information about what we're doing. Headquarters, but I work in Silicon Valley, led by Reverend Bryan. This is what stuns me when I was out there with Reverend Bryan. Some seniors in his church, quote unquote little old ladies, get all their medicine and shop there online. That's a big deal, huh? There's no cab fare, and no begging somebody to get their medicine. They get it online. So we have to this is a phenomenal time in which we live.
I want the listeners, the viewers to hear this, because Reverend Jackson was able to watch seniors older than him get email addresses for the first time, have access to the internet, and then, as he mentioned, order their medicine, and then be able to now, because of the pandemic, order food, DoorDash, and Grubhub, and use social media to stay in touch with their families. Reverend Jackson's vision has allowed us to be more ready for something that we never expected to happen with the pandemic, but it's really benefited our community at large. But for seniors, it has been really a lifeline. And for those churches that have tapped in, they've really utilized it. And so, Reverend Jackson, thank you for having that kind of vision to make us ready for something that we didn't know we had to be ready for.
You already ready. This man's a minister, jazz pianist. He's a Renaissance man. Let me put this to you, Angela. We have a situation that we organize 1,000 churches, 50 in 20 major markets, the 100 markets in America. We drive to Black and Brown, 100 markets, San Francisco to LA to Denver to so Black and Brown people must see this as an opportunity to make a big deal.
Reverend Jackson, now my mama, she passed away, you all know, she was 90 years old. Reverend Jackson was with us at the end. My mother became tech savvy probably 10 years before I did. My mother at 90 years old was on her deathbed in the hospital ordering shoes. She was ordering, you don't even want to know what else she was ordering online. She ordered her chair online. I mean, she became so tech savvy until she was spreading the word to other seniors. You guys got to learn how to do this. And what led to a really great intergenerational kind of connection with our young people who are tech savvy, helping our senior citizens learn how to utilize those skills, and helping them make sure they stay within their budget too. Because a couple of times I had to say, mother, no, you know, but I mean, it's just a remarkable skill and tool to have for our seniors to help them live their lives more fully in their senior years.
Absolutely.
It really is. Our tech makes life more accessible as well as cheaper. You can order food through the internet, and your clothes through the internet, and your paycheck, welfare check, as the case may be. You don't have to go out and drive a car, drive an Uber.
Yeah.
Our tech matters.
The thing that I'm hearing is you all celebrating all of the work you all have done, as you should. It's so important for our people to know how important and critical this mission has been to you, Reverend Jackson, and you, Congresswoman Lee, and you, Reverend Bryant. But what I want to know is if the tech industry, from your standards and from your shift towards racial equity, has matched your effort. How would you grade the tech industry right now on meeting you halfway in the battle for racial equity in tech?
I'll say C-, because we still have under 6% for the most part in the tech sector as being part of the workforce. We don't have a lot of contracts and suppliers who supplied the goods and services to the tech sector. Again, we're making a lot of progress. I know one tech company promised us when they had some openings, you don't know, Brian, who this was, that when they had openings, they would put on an African-American on the board. We went back the next year, there had been 2 openings. They had put 0 African-Americans on the board. So I think we've made some progress. I certainly say C- for me.
Some of them get C. I mean, I would Apple has done stuff. Cook and Dr. Jackson have done. Other companies have not done. Her role in C-suite is a very strong position. The mothers, I mean, look, the Amazon mess have unions in the South. I mean, we have a big fight on our hands with these companies. Make them do the right thing. We both share the stocks. We go to shareholders meetings. That's the platform. The shareholders meetings for the big stuff. They can't say no to us because we have the data. Let me say, today we're fighting voter suppression. That's a real deal. I mean, in 1890, we got the right to vote, 15th Amendment. 8 black congressmen from South Carolina. We were majority blacks in several southern states. They took terror. They drove us out, shooting us, hanging us, lynching us, running churches. Whole towns like Rosewood, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma. This crowd here, the difference between us and them, we have knowledge of what's happening. We have access. We're not limited to a newspaper. When Dr. King came to my home in 1967, we were doing a strike at the Claus and Bakery. And he spoke, 4,000 people came. They didn't have a single newspaper item or picture of him being in Caribbean. They're ashamed of that today, but they use block us out the paper. So when they move on Trump by his fascist tendencies, it's because we have enough good sense to know that we should not drown in our own blood. Angela, you're special to us, Angela. Thank you, Joe.
What a special treat. Like, I love y'all. Y'all aren't just family in tech, it's just period. And so I was so happy that we got to do this again, Congresswoman Lee, because it's like our family reunion to also check in, say, how are you doing? But also, how's the tech industry doing? When you consider, we just heard some grades. Reverend Brian, you actually didn't give your grade yet. So I want to hear your grade for the tech industry. And then I want to transition to talk about the folks who are in place and how many more we need.
C- sounds pretty accurate to me. There's been some nice progress made, but when you start so far behind, you've got a long way to go. And so I think C- is pretty gracious, but it's relatively accurate. We don't want to discourage them. And so we'll give them a C-.
Okay, that means they got some work to do because that's still below average. So when you consider the folks who are supposed to be our allies inside these companies, in senior leadership positions, and then folks who look like us, who you all know One of my favorite things that Butch used to say all the time is, did you start working in tech before 2002 or after 2002? And he said, and if it was after, thank Reverend Jackson for your job, right? To people of color. How do you think that the allies and the people of color who have been there since PushTech started, since CBC Tech started, how are they doing? How would you grade them? And do they have enough power to do anything?
Yeah.
I think that's another important point.
Yeah, I think, Angela, first of all, I think they are doing a phenomenal job, first of all, because the majority of the tech sector, African-American employees are really committed to racial equity, as well as the additional responsibilities that they have. What I do know, though, is that retention is very difficult because these tech companies don't have the cultural environment and support system for African Americans. And so after a certain period of time, many decide to heck with this. This is in some ways a hostile environment, and we're gonna get the heck out. One example, coming to the Bay Area, African Americans, especially those who are in San Francisco or Silicon Valley, just access to the Black community and to beauticians, barbershops, access to our cultural activities. How do you relate to an area where the cost of housing is triple where you came from, or the housing incentives? And there are a lot of issues that are specific for Black Americans once you get inside of these companies that must be addressed. Otherwise, the environment is not as conducive as it should be. And actually, in many companies, it becomes, quite frankly, hostile.
That's a good point. What about you, Reverend Bryant? You've seen some of the same things that Miss Lee is talking about. I know friend after friend, right, who will leave a company like, I couldn't get anywhere. You know, you're running against, you know, opposition after opposition when they acted like, oh, you're going to come in and help fix it. But they have to report to the person who is responsible for preventing, right, the same diversity and inclusion that we're talking about, and equity. When you are dealing with someone who is like the only person, you know, or the employee resource group doesn't really exist. What is encouraging them to stay to, you know, fight the good fight when they feel like they're fighting alone?
That's a great point. One of the first things we did during the first few years of live conferences is that we met with the ERG group leaders and groups in general, because we wanted those employee resource groups to, you know, have a place to just, you know, whether it be vent or kind of debrief or exhale or what, you know, just because of the frustration of being in those places where there's so little cultural sensitivity. And to Congresswoman Lee's point, you know, over here on this side of the Bay, you know, right on this side of the Bay, you know, it's a different struggle for African Americans in San Francisco and in Silicon Valley, because there's so few and there's so few cultural norms that are part of the regular culture, not let alone the corporate culture and Silicon Valley tech culture. So we send folks to Oakland constantly to get a good, you know, hairpiece, hairdo, haircut, soul food, what have you. And so what we've done with a lot of the employees, a lot of the minority employees, particularly African American, is we've tried to provide them enough of a support outside for them to be able to have a safe place to talk about their challenges. But we've also tried to galvanize them by bringing several of them together from various companies. If it's 2 at this company and 3 at that company and 5 at this company and 1 at that company, we'll bring them all together every, quarter or twice a year, whatever it is. And our PushTech event has really been a part of that as well, to have those receptions or to get together or to share information, and even how you helped us, Angela, to envision our network online, how we set up, people to stay connected, to encourage each other. I think it's a big part of it, but that takes so much additional effort, because folks just need to get the job done so they can keep their job, but they also need to have a sense of connection to somebody that understands the challenges. And the other thing that's a frustration oftentimes is that companies will try to recycle the same handful of talented African Americans instead of looking into a pipeline and saying, wait a minute, there may be more out there that we haven't touched yet.
Congresswoman Lee, I want to come to you on this because we talked about the legislative strategy and even the funding strategy via appropriations and the powerful seat that you hold on the Appropriations Committee. We didn't talk about you going into these companies yourselves, not just inviting them to the Hill, but going to sit with CEOs on strategy. When you look going forward for this year, because we're not looking back, we know progress has been slow, but there has been progress thanks to the work of the caucus and, of course, Rainbow Push. But what do you see going forward? What will your approach be? How will you engage these companies? And what are some of the goals that you have now that they have gone outside of the window that you set for them to shift demographics exponentially?
Sure. Well, we're going to stick to our same goals, but we have added an added lens, and that is what has happened during the pandemic. Who got laid off first? Okay. Who had access to broadband? Who could work from home? Who had the portfolio that kept them on track in terms of their jobs? And how were they treated during this pandemic? I want to know how the African-American, specifically how the African-American workforce fared during this pandemic. And I want to know also if they've downsized, which I don't think they have, if they've shifted and how their business plan and how their mission has been changed. And also how the board has adapted. And of course, I want to know, especially with this company that had those 2 vacancies, if they've had any additional vacancies, have they put on any African-Americans on the board yet? And I want to know also, in terms of just this last political cycle, how they've addressed voter suppression and the hostile kind of messages and platforms that we saw during the prior election. Just what has been done in terms of their commitment to make sure that First Amendment rights are adhered to, but that hostility and racial injustice and that hate speech and racism has not been allowed during this pandemic, and were they asleep at the wheels or not? So there's a lot of additional goals or at least perspectives I want to know and questions I have to ask because of the pandemic, and if their employees had health care and how they survived during this. What did they need, Black employees that they needed that maybe other white employees did not need. And so there are a lot of layers now during this pandemic that we need to drill down on.
Reverend Brian, I love what Congresswoman Lee is talking about here, because I think that in her comments and in her next steps, what you're hearing is elements of the conscience of the Congress, which the CBC is known for. It's not just about diversifying this industry for the sake of representation on its face. She's also concerned about the general working conditions and the ability to thrive in the environment. You all are doing the same thing with the pipeline work that you're talking about doing, ensuring that people have an opportunity to check in. There's an employee resource group, even if we're not all employees in the same company. And so I'd love to know from your vantage point for PushTech, what you all see as your goals for this year going forward. What can tech companies and the employees in the broader resource group count on you for this year?
Great question. One of the things we want to do is get behind Congresswoman Lee and be a promoter, supporter, an engager in everything that she's doing from that perspective, how we can be boots on the ground support for her. I think it's going to be really important. We had talked with her staff and with others in the CBC, Congressman Butterfield's office and others, about how we could be involved on our end to support the effort right before the pandemic hit. And so now that we're making this turn with the vaccine and things are beginning to re-engage, we want to be able to ensure that we are in sync with that work and provide the support that we can as an organization, utilizing our network, our bandwidth, Reverend Jackson's name, and those that we have on the ground to be able to support those efforts. I think that's critically important that we work together in tandem. Secondly, though, just from our own organizational perspective, several elements in this conference even are going to be talking about job opportunities, training opportunities, access to employment. And we've actually asked companies to share with us, what does your hiring practice look like? What do you look for? What are your expectations? How can we connect you with the right type of candidates? And we even have a group called HBCU Heroes. That's an organization that is a readiness organization that helps get young African Americans at HBCUs ready for the job market. And we've committed to partnering with them to introduce them to executives in Silicon Valley and tech industry leadership so that they know what they're looking for. And then those young people can begin to get the type of experience they need. And we've also asked the companies, and we're going to announce it later in the conference, a couple of the companies have made a commitment for their own training programs, their own marketing and development programs to bring in some of the students in our network. And so we want to really be a conduit. We're called Rainbow Coalition for a reason. And I think part of that reason is that we do bring people together and we connect the dots with folks that generally don't have access to each other. So we want to support what's happening on the Hill. And then we want to continue to create pipelines and connections so that the talent base is tapped into and we have more access to opportunities for young adults who are training and preparing for their tech future.
Dr. Brian, Andrew, let me just mention one thing following up on the pipeline issue, because it is so important that we focus on HBCUs. And let me mention a couple of things coming from California. There are no HBCUs west of the Mississippi, first of all. Because of the end of affirmative action, Proposition 209, the state that sends the most amount of students to HBCUs is California, okay?
That's right.
And so I have to emphasize the importance of that, but I also have to emphasize that this is, again, what I'm going to talk to the companies about when we return in person on this one. We have, and I've made, in making the rounds to these companies, I talk about PBIs, predominantly Black institutions. That's west of the Mississippi. You have, for example, in my district, Merritt College, you have up and down the state, minority serving institutions. And so they miss it if they don't include PBIs, because a tech job oftentimes only requires an AA, if that. There may be certificated programs at predominantly Black institutions. And so I want to be sure that when I return that I'm going to make sure they have put PBIs on their radar also.
And one last piece of that, and I love that, Congresswoman, there's just so much music to my ears. You talk about the companies and us going back to them. Several of them, they've been on hiatus or they've been working remotely for quite a long time. And so they decided they're going to have their employees. And I love what you said about benefits and healthcare and support. But one of the things that we also want to do is to find out, coming out of the pandemic, what is your sustainability plan to make sure that this is not just a knee-jerk reaction? Some things that they did as a result of the pandemic and the global awakening around social justice last year, how much of that are you going to commit to long-term? How much are you going to commit to being that inclusive, investing that much money, having that many reasons? Is this just a 2020-21 thing, or is this a thing we can begin to look for? You're going to roll out RFPs and funding and grants and all these things that you all did in these 2 years, a year and a half. Are they going to be a part of your sustainability plan going forward? Because as they commit to those things, we can begin to build economically as a people, as a culture, and that's critical. And so building on what has happened, part of our ask to them is, listen, we hope you aren't going to stop just because, the George Floyd, trial is over. I hope you are still understanding this is an ongoing reality for us, that we can't stop with just writing one check last year because it was a hot topic, but we need you all to commit ongoing to making equity a part of your system.
Yeah, Angela, and can I just say one more thing on this? You opened Pandora's box on going back to these tech companies, because I have a whole list of items in my agenda. I want to know their commitment to social and economic impacts of communities, where they're citing where gentrification is occurring as a result of their presence. Not that we don't want them there, but we want to know if they're displacing people, what are they doing to mitigate against that displacement, especially Black and brown people? And what are they doing to invest in affordable housing so that people don't have to leave their communities because the tech sector has decided to site here, there, or yonder? So that's on my agenda also, the social and economic impacts.
That is exactly what needs to be there. I'm from Seattle, and I've seen it happen not once, but twice, with Microsoft and then with Amazon. And Amazon, you can't hardly find a place in Seattle that's not super expensive. So you say we want you there, but I'm just saying, we want you there if you're going to be a good community
corporate citizen.
responsible, yes, partner. And so on that, and in true CBC former staff for fashion, Miss Lee, and apparently I work here too, Reverend Bryant, I want to know if you're directing a call to action to me, what would it be, and how I can spread that same word to my friends who are in the tech sector and are not. All of us are involved in tech in some way. We are literally on the opening session on Zoom, a tech platform. You know, when I talk to Ms. Lee, mostly it's on iMessage. You know, this is how we communicate. It is literally embedded in every aspect of our lives. So when we talk about ensuring that tech is just as responsible for us as we are for them, what does our collective call to action look like? I will start with you, Reverend Bryant, and I'm going to end. I know it's normally ladies first, but I'm going to end with Congresswoman Lee to close us out.
Well, I'm going to yield most of my time to Congresswoman outside of just saying thank you. And Angela, just, you know, you are such a strong force for us. You make us so proud as we watch and listen to you advocate for us constantly. You do so with such a degree of polished professionalism and power all at once. And you speak our truth in a way that everyone understands it, regardless of what type of panel, what type of moderating you're doing, what type of interview you're doing on various networks. And I think that it's important for us to just appreciate you, because your stage, your platform is being used to help further this message for us on social justice, on equality, on equity. You are such a part of this. So I want to just say thank you, and then yield the floor to Congresswoman Lee.
Well, I have to say, I associate myself with all of your remarks, Dr. Bryan, but I just want to add that Angela also is a deep thinker, and she does a deep dive, and she understands intersectionality. And our people need to really know that intersectionality, what affects one affects all, what affects this industry, what affects the employee, the workforce, the contracts, the C-suites, the board membership, affects our community in general. And so we have to see, and Angela has really got this genius about her that she can put all this together where people understand that
Amen.
Unity and seeing these issues and how they intersect really is the only way that we can move forward. And so Angela, I would just say, my marching orders is use technology to save our democracy. Register to vote. I know Reverend Jackson, Dr. Bryan, you know this because we're at the brink right now. And so what in this world, I don't care if you're in the tech sector or where we are, my marching orders are use technology to register to vote, to organize, to mobilize, because this is not in a vacuum. This is a political struggle. And if we don't understand that, and if we just stay in our silos in terms of whatever we're doing professionally, then we'll never make progress. And so this technology is so important to get people to the polls and to register to vote. Finally, it's extremely important to get people to get to your members of Congress, and we can give you all of the bills, all 20 bills, to have your members of Congress say, yes, I'm gonna co-sponsor each and every one of these 20 bills, because that's what happens, Angela, you know, in Congress, it's the numbers game. So if you wanna see computer science for all, if you wanna see racial equity in the workforce, whatever, we've got bills that would force that into the law, but those bills aren't gonna pass unless your member of Congress says yes to them. And so whoever your member of Congress is, whether it's CBC or not, go to that member of Congress, say co-sponsor the following 20 bills, hold your elected officials accountable. That's my marching orders. I have to, it's all political, okay?
I'm waiting for this op-ed to come out from Congresswoman Lee and Reverend Jackson that's called "The Fight for Equity and Technology is a Political Struggle." Like you said, that is a thing. And so in the 50th anniversary year of the Congressional Black Caucus, to sit with a former chair, one of the most meaningful, dopest workhorses I know, Congresswoman Lee, and Reverend Bryant, for your grace, for the way that you stand alongside Reverend to ensure his consistent dignity, to know that, to make sure that we all know the work that he's done and that he's not doing it alone. Who says Black folks can't work together? I saw a whole bunch of unity happening on the screen today. And so in that spirit, we send you all forth to ensure that the fight for equity in tech isn't just a political struggle, but it's one where we recognize our full and complete value and power as a people. So with that, I love y'all so much. I can't wait till we talk again. And may the next conversation be that they at least have a B+.
We're gonna work twice as hard then. Thank you.
That was good to me.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you. I love y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to our 6th annual PushTech Diversity Inclusion Summit Freedom sponsors, Facebook, Amgen, Equality sponsor, Comcast, Justice sponsors, Siebert Williams Shank, Wells Fargo, Diversity sponsors, MFR Securities, KPOR Center, Salesforce, Inclusion sponsors, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, CL King Associates.
This has been a fantastic evening, my friends. It's been great having you with us to start the PushTech Conference, but you do understand we've got 2 full days coming up. We are so excited for you to join us Thursday and Friday. Please, if you haven't already registered for the upcoming days, if you haven't already made sure to put it on your calendars, we will be right here Thursday and Friday, the 13th and 14th, starting at 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, 12 noon East Coast time. We want you all right here with us. We have some fantastic panel discussions tomorrow. We're going to be hearing from some of our corporate leaders from Google and from Airbnb, and we're going to hear from the incredible Mr. Van Jones and from so many leaders in the Black and brown community that have been entrepreneurs and engaging. We're even going to talk about diversity in sports as we expand our conversation on inclusion. Don't miss a moment tomorrow, starting at 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, and don't forget on the East Coast, it's 12 noon, it's lunchtime. Y'all better jump in with us. Friday, the same thing. Please be with us. Same start times, 9 a.m., 11 a.m., and 12 noon. But more than anything, continue to spread the good word about the good work of our leader, Reverend Jesse Jackson. Make sure you hashtag things out, that you make sure that you ping your friends, tag them, and let them know they need to be a part of what we are doing. And aren't we excited about what we've been able to celebrate, not only tonight, but this past year? It's been difficult. We've had some tough moments. The pandemic has made all of us shift. And obviously, we've had some social unrest. But we've been reminded that Black lives matter. Now, they've always mattered to us. They've always mattered to people who look like you and I. They've always mattered to people of consciousness and conscientiousness and those that really want to see equality and unity in a very real way. But this past year gave us some chances, some moments through the unfortunate pain of some injustice against our people. It just allowed us to raise the standard again, to remind everyone that Black lives do matter. They matter because as long as any of us are treated like we don't matter, we've got to remind people that we do matter. And I'm grateful that, again, we have a homeboy from the Bay Area, from San Francisco, Martin Luther, is going to share with us a very special tribute song entitled Black Lives Matter. We all matter, friends. But as long as our world keeps treating us like Black lives don't matter, we'll remind them that we do. Join us tomorrow. Continue to push forward. Continue to keep hope alive. Join us in the morning for this 6th annual event. Let's close out tonight with this song. We love you. This is Dr. Joseph Bryant Jr. Peace.
As long as you know life matters, your life matters, Black life matters to me. As long as you know life matters, your life matters, Black life matters to me. As long as you know life matters, your life matters, Black life matters to me. As long as you know life matters, your life matters, life matters to me. Tell it to the rage, burning down, growing deeper inside me. Speak it to my faith, spiritual warrior. Oh yes, I'm a believer. Oh yes. Got me here by grace, I mean on the wing of a dreamer. I made it. So get about my way. If you can't take the pressure it breeds. Whoa, I'm giving you that black love, black sugar, yes. Whoa, oh, now that's that black love, black sugar. Whoa, you can tell by the way we walk, hear the spirit in the way we talk now. For the love you give that don't get recognized. Heart is working up and down the line, yeah. Underpaid and working overtime. It's in your genius, you was born to shine. Well, you can't give up, can't get over, and can't get out of the game, no. Said you can't give up, can't get over, and can't get out of the game. Somebody help me. You can't give up, can't get over, and can't get out of the game, Lord. Said you can't give up, can't get over, and can't get out of the game. You know that has that black love, black sugar, oh, whoa, oh, that's that black love, whoa, I can see it in the way you're walking when you're talking love. That's that black sugar now.